3 a.m. The bedroom was completely dark. I don't know what woke me up. Not a sound from outside. Not my alarm. Something just pulled me out of sleep. The way your body sometimes knows something before your mind does. I lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, listening. Then I heard it. Soft, almost a whisper. Calvin. I turned my head slowly. My wife, eyes closed, still asleep. I thought I imagined it. I almost closed my eyes again. Then she said it louder. Calvin. I sat up. My chest tightened. Then louder, clearer, like she was right there talking to him. Calvin. I froze. Because that name didn't belong in our bedroom. That name belonged to her office, to her phone screen, to late night calls she said were just work emergencies. Calvin, her boss. I sat there in the dark, heart pounding, mind going completely still the way it does right before something breaks. I reached over slowly. I touched her shoulder, gently at first. She didn't move. I shook her, a little harder this time. She gasped, sat straight up, eyes wide open, disoriented. That look people get when reality rushes back too fast. She looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us said anything for 3 full seconds. Then she whispered 2 words. I lied. She blinked, looked down at her hands. And she stopped. Just stopped. Like she caught herself. Like something slammed shut behind her eyes. And I sat there in the dark, in my own bedroom, next to the woman I built everything with, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from, because after what happened that night, I started questioning everything I thought I knew about marriage. Everything. And I think some of you need to hear this. Let me back up. Let me tell you who we were before that night, because none of this started at 3 a.m. It started years before, in a kitchen, over coffee, on a quiet Sunday morning when my wife looked at me and said she wanted to go back to work. Her name is Diane. We'd been married 6 years at that point. We had a comfortable life. Not rich, not struggling, just stable. I worked. She managed the home. We had a rhythm. It worked. And I want to be honest with you right now because I've had a lot of time to think about this. I didn't want her to work, not because I needed control. That's not who I am. I want to be very clear about that. I wanted peace. I wanted us to be present. I wanted Sunday dinners that weren't interrupted by emails. I wanted vacations where her phone stayed in the bag. I wanted to build something calm, something solid. She wanted something different. She wanted purpose outside of our walls. She wanted to use the degree she'd worked hard for. She wanted to grow, to move, to be something in the world beyond wife and partner. And I understood that. I really did. Even if part of me wished things could stay simple. So I supported her. I told her to go. She started as an HR coordinator at a mid-sized logistics company. 40 hours a week, reasonable hours. Low stress. I adjusted. We both did. And honestly, the first year wasn't bad. She was energized, happy in a way I hadn't seen in a while. That thing women get when they feel like themselves again, like they've been given back something that was missing. I felt good about my decision, about our decision. She got promoted, then promoted again. 2 years in, she was managing a team. 3 years in, head of HR. I was proud, genuinely proud. The kind of pride that sits in your chest warm and quiet. I told everyone, her parents, my parents, our friends. Diane's running the whole HR department now. Yeah, my wife. I meant it. I was proud. And then things started shifting. It was small things first, the kind of things you notice but file away, the kind of things that only become patterns in hindsight. The first thing I noticed was her phone. Not that she was on it more. She was always on it. That's corporate life. I understood that. It was how she held it. Face down, on the table, on the counter, on the nightstand. Always face down. I didn't say anything. Then the calls started coming later. Not during business hours after dinner, sometimes after 9. once or twice past 10. She'd take them in the other room. Close the door softly, come back, sit down, go back to whatever she was doing, like it was normal. I told myself it was normal. She's head of HR. Sensitive situations come up. Emergencies don't keep business hours. People need guidance after hours sometimes. I told myself all of that. Then I started hearing a name. Calvin. At first it came up the way coworkers come up. Naturally, casually, in the flow of a story about work. Calvin wants to restructure the whole onboarding process, which is a nightmare. Calvin approved the new benefits package finally. Oh, Calvin is hilarious. He said the funniest thing in the meeting today. I nodded. I half listened. The way you do when your partner talks about people you've never met. But Calvin kept coming up. Every dinner, every car ride, every quiet evening. Calvin's vision for the company, Calvin's management style, Calvin's sense of humor, Calvin's opinion on this, Calvin's frustration with that. I remember thinking, this man has a lot of opinions. I didn't say anything. I told myself I wasn't that kind of husband, the insecure kind, the suspicious kind, the kind who makes his wife feel watched. I had too much pride for that. Then something changed, and this is the part that actually made me pay attention. Diane stopped mentioning Calvin. Completely. One week he was in every other sentence. The next week, nothing. Silence. Like the name had been quietly removed from her vocabulary. You'd think that would be a relief. It wasn't, because the absence of something can feel louder than its presence, especially when you're paying attention. I noticed. I didn't say anything, but I noticed. Around the same time, the calls got later, not from unknown numbers, from a contact she had saved. I caught a glimpse once, just once, the name on the screen before she flipped it over. Calvin, at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. She stepped outside to the back porch. I watched through the kitchen window without meaning to. She was laughing, head tilted back a little, the way she laughs when she's comfortable with someone. She came back inside, sat next to me on the couch, said, "Sorry, work thing." I nodded. And here's the part I'm most ashamed of. I let it go. I started doing that thing that I think a lot of people in long relationships do. That quiet negotiation with yourself where you trade truth for comfort. I told myself, she's ambitious and her boss respects that. Late calls are part of leadership. The laughing just means they have a good working relationship. The phone being face down is just a habit. The not mentioning him anymore is just because she's tired of talking about work. I built a whole architecture of explanations, and I lived inside it, because the alternative required a courage I wasn't ready for. But your body knows things before your mind admits them. I was sleeping less, eating differently. I'd reach over in the middle of the night and just feel relieved she was there. Not romantically, almost like checking, like my hand needed confirmation. I was not okay. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. The work trip started in the fall. First one was 2 days. Chicago, some kind of regional conference. She mentioned it casually about a week before. Calvin's organizing a leadership offsite. Whole department heads are going. There was his name again, after weeks of silence. I said, "Sounds good. I'll manage things here." She seemed almost relieved by my answer, which was a strange thing to notice. She came back from Chicago and something was different. I couldn't name it at first. She was warmer, more affectionate actually, but distracted. Like her warmth was real, but her mind was somewhere else. I put it down to exhaustion from travel. The second trip was a month later. 3 days that time. Dallas. I helped her pack, kissed her goodbye, stood in the driveway. She waved from the car window, smiled. I waved back, and stood there alone in the driveway for a moment longer than I needed to. Something in my stomach wouldn't settle. While she was in Dallas, I did something I'm not proud of. Not dramatic, not invasive, but it revealed something. I checked our shared family calendar, the one we'd set up years ago so we could keep track of each other's schedules. She had the Dallas trip marked, but the dates didn't match what she'd told me. She said she was leaving Thursday morning, returning Saturday evening. The calendar said Thursday to Sunday. One extra day. Could have been an update she forgot to share. Could have been an error. Could have been 100 innocent things. But there it was. A one-day gap. Small enough to explain away. Big enough that it sat in my chest like a stone. She came back Saturday evening, like she said. I didn't mention the calendar. I hugged her, asked how it went. She said, "Long, exhausting. Glad to be home." I made dinner. We ate together. And I smiled across the table at my wife, while that stone sat exactly where it had been. I want to be careful here because I know how this sounds. I know some of you are already at the end of your patience with me. You're thinking, why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you ask directly? And I hear you. But here's the truth about being inside a marriage when something feels wrong. It's not like being outside it. From the outside, everything is obvious. From the inside, you're terrified of being wrong. You're terrified of destroying something real over something imagined. You're terrified that asking the question makes you the problem. So you wait and you watch and you hope you're wrong. November. Diane came home one evening and she was upset. Not about me, about work. There'd been some kind of internal complaint, a situation she was handling. She didn't give details. HR confidentiality, she always said. But she was shaken. I sat with her, made tea, let her talk without interrupting. And at one point she said something that stopped me cold. "Calvin's protecting me on this one. He went to bat for me." I looked at her. "Protecting you from what?" She paused, just a half second too long. "Office politics. You know how it gets." I nodded slowly. "Does he do that often? Go to bat for you?" She looked at me then. Really looked at me, like she was measuring something. "He's my boss. That's what good bosses do." She looked away. I didn't push it, but I didn't forget it either. December came. Things between us felt thin, like fabric that's been washed too many times, still holding together, but fragile. We spent Christmas with her family. Everything looked normal. She laughed. I laughed. Her mother hugged me and said we seemed so solid. We smiled at each other across the table. And I thought, maybe I've been wrong. Maybe this is just the stress of her career. Maybe I've been building a case out of shadows. I almost convinced myself. Then January happened. It was a Thursday. I came home earlier than usual. Nothing dramatic. My last meeting canceled. The house was quiet. I assumed she was still at work. I sat at the kitchen table, started going through mail. Then I heard her, upstairs, on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen. I wasn't tiptoeing. I was just there. And I heard her say, in a voice I hadn't heard her use in a long time, a low, soft, almost careful voice. I know, but we can't keep doing this." Pause. "Because it's not right." Long pause. "I know how you feel. I know. But this isn't what I want my life to look like." I stood completely still at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't hear me come in. "I have to go. Please don't call tonight. Please." Silence. I walked back to the kitchen, sat down, stared at the mail in my hands without seeing any of it. She came downstairs 20 minutes later, stopped when she saw me. "Oh, you're home early." "Yeah, meeting canceled." She went to the refrigerator, started making dinner, asked about my day. I answered. We ate. We watched television. We went to bed. And at 3 a.m. she whispered his name in her sleep. So let me tell you what happened after she whispered those two words. I lied. And then silence. I sat in the dark next to her, and I chose not to panic. I chose not to fill that silence with accusations. Because I'd learned something over the past several months of watching and waiting and building that architecture of explanations. Panic gives people a way out. Calm doesn't. I said very quietly, "What did you lie about, Diane?" She looked at me. I could see her face in the dark, the way someone looks when they've been caught off guard and they know it. She said, "I was having a dream. I don't even know what I was saying." I said, "You said his name. You said I lied. What did you lie about?" She pulled the blanket up, turned away slightly. "I don't remember the dream. Go back to sleep." I didn't go back to sleep. I lay there until sunrise, perfectly still, thinking. I want to tell you what I found out, But I need to tell you the right way, because this is the part where everything I thought I understood turned sideways. The next morning, I did something I should have done months earlier. I sat down with my wife, not with anger, not with accusations. Coffee on the table, morning light, calm. I told her exactly what I'd been experiencing. The phone, the calls, the name, the calendar, the conversation I overheard, all of it. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just laid it out like a quiet collection of facts, and I watched her face while I talked. By the time I finished, she was crying. Not defensive crying, not angry crying, the kind that comes from somewhere real. And she told me the truth, not all at once, not cleanly. It came out the way truth often does in pieces, some of them still not quite fitting together. Calvin had become more than a boss to her. She didn't use the word affair. She used words like emotional connection and complicated, and I didn't plan for this. She said nothing physical had happened, that the line hadn't been crossed in that way, but she had developed feelings, real ones, and she'd been trying to end it. That conversation I overheard on the stairs, that was her telling him it was over. That was her trying to choose. And here's the part that twisted everything. Calvin was married too, not happily. His marriage had been failing for years. He'd been leaning on Diane, professionally first, then personally. She became his anchor at work, his confidant, and somewhere in that closeness, something had grown that she hadn't managed, hadn't protected herself from, hadn't protected us from. She said she was ashamed, that she'd told herself it was nothing for so long that she'd lost the ability to see it clearly. And the lie she whispered in her sleep, she had told me once, months ago, that Calvin was strictly professional, that the calls were always about employee situations, that I had nothing to worry about. She lied. That was the lie. I sat with that for a long time. I didn't say anything dramatic when she finished. I didn't slam a door. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't make a speech. I asked her one question. What do you want? She looked at me. I want this. I want us. I made a mistake, and I don't want to lose everything because of it. I nodded, and I stood up, and I walked outside. I sat on the porch for 2 hours, and I thought about who I was, and who she was, and what we had built, and what had been allowed to grow in the space where I had been too proud to ask questions, too confident to stay curious, too certain of her loyalty to pay attention. Because here is the thing about trust that nobody tells you. Trust is not passive. Trust is not the same as assuming. You can love someone and still need to stay awake inside the relationship, not suspicious, not controlling, but present, paying attention, willing to ask the uncomfortable question before it becomes the unbearable one. I thought about that for 2 hours on that porch. I want to be real with you about what came next, because the honest answer is, it wasn't clean. We went to counseling. It was hard. There were sessions where I sat across from my wife and felt like I was looking at someone I recognized but didn't fully know. There were sessions where she said things that broke something in me, and sessions where she said things that slowly, quietly started to rebuild it. I had her resign from that position, not as punishment, as a boundary, as a condition. She agreed. She found something else 6 months later. Different company, fresh start. Calvin and his wife eventually separated. That wasn't my concern, and I tried to keep it that way. But here's the part that still sits with me. The things I saw and chose to file away, they were real. The face-down phone, the late calls, the name that disappeared from her vocabulary, the calendar date that didn't match. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was simply too willing to explain away what I already knew. That's not love, not entirely. That's fear wearing love's face. Where are we now? We're still together. And I want to be honest. It's not the same marriage. I don't know if it ever will be. Some things, once they're named, change the shape of the room you share. But we're both more honest now, more awake to each other, less willing to assume, more willing to say the uncomfortable thing out loud before it becomes something whispered in the dark at 3 a.m. I don't know if that's a happy ending, but it's a real one. And I think real is what most of us are actually after, even when we don't know how to say it. The lesson I took from all of this isn't to be suspicious of your partner. It isn't to check phones or set traps or keep score. It's simpler than that. Stay awake. Stay present. Trust without awareness is just blindness with a better name. If this story touched something in you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because you came here at the right time, and so did I.